Lydia is just so cute. The voice became clearer as the door opened, and at the sound of that name from Quinn's lips, I froze. I wondered who it could be, but hearing that name confirmed it. It was unmistakably my sister, Lai. Quinn stubbornly kept repeating Lai's name, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. Realizing I needed to capture the moment, I quickly recorded the scene on my smartphone before quietly slipping away. After a while, the two of them emerged from the bedroom. When they saw me, their faces turned pale. I said, "That's right. I've already sent the video to Gabrielle. Now, let's discuss what comes next for the four of us." Lai's face drained of color even further. "What do you mean?" she stammered. I raised my smartphone and replied, "Just what it sounds like. I have the video as evidence. What have you done?" In a panic, my sister lunged at me. "My name is Linny, a 45-year-old housewife with twin boys who are in 6th grade. Twins run in families, and indeed, I am a twin myself. My twin sister, Lai, and I have always been more rivals than sisters. Even if we weren't twins, our competitive nature would have likely persisted. Growing up, I was constantly compared to Lai. This comparison fueled a deep-seated complex in me, while Lai focused intensely on outshining me. Lai was the cute and affable one, while I was shy and reserved. Naturally, people's attention always gravitated toward Lai, especially when we met new people. Despite our rivalry, I deeply admired Lai. Her ever-smiling face and popularity were qualities I aspired to, but it seemed she didn't share the same feelings. In elementary school, we used to play together, but I was always stuck with the roles nobody wanted. If there was a game of tag and no one wanted to be it, I was always the one who had to take the role. Even when a friend suggested we decide by rock, paper, scissors, Lai would pressure me, saying, "You do it, right, Linny?" Not wanting to be disliked or left out, I reluctantly agreed. Lai's manipulative behavior extended beyond playtime. In 6th grade, when we were assigned roles for a school play, Snow White, I hoped to be the narrator. Unfortunately, I caught a cold and missed the role assignment day. I trusted Lai when she promised to inform the teacher of my preference. Upon my return to school, I was stunned to find myself cast as the lead role. "Why am I the lead?" I asked a friend in disbelief. The response was shocking. "Lai said you wanted to be the lead." "I never said that," I protested, but the decision was final. It turned out that, as we were entering puberty, no one wanted the potentially embarrassing lead role of Snow White. As a quiet girl who had been absent, I was chosen. The teacher had even verified with Lai, who said, "She wants to, but she's too shy to volunteer. Let this be an opportunity for Linny to shine." Lai's recommendation was presented as if it was for my benefit, but I felt manipulated. Despite my protests, the roles were already set. I faced the pressure from teachers and parents, and somehow managed to pull through. The play was a huge success, and I received praise from everyone, except Lai, who looked on with disdain. "Anyone could have done that," she scoffed. "Getting all that praise for such a little thing is just silly." That was the moment I truly felt Lai's resentment. Afterward, she stopped inviting me to play. Initially painful, I eventually saw it as a relief. I made new friends and began enjoying my time. By middle school, many people didn't even know we were twins. We had grown so distant that we barely spoke, and it was clear we had diverged significantly. We even requested to be in separate classes, and I started enjoying my own life. Then, as I was studying for high school entrance exams, Lai approached me. "Studying? Have you decided which high school you're applying to?" "Yeah," I replied. "I'm thinking of going for High School A. It's the newest and closest to our house, with competitive entrance requirements." For 3 years, I worked tirelessly to get into the high school of my choice. My efforts were driven by a deep desire to prove myself and achieve something on my own. However, Lai, completely unaware of the hard work I put in, laughed when she heard about my choice. "High School A? You've got to be kidding," she said with a smirk. "Why don't you just go to B High School with me? It sounds like you wouldn't even need to study much for that." Lai always managed to manipulate me, but I was determined not to let her dictate my choice of high school. For the first time, I stood up to her. "I've decided to go to a high school you don't know about. If you don't want to study, that's fine, but don't get in my way. I turned away from her and went back to my textbook, but Lai's reaction was far from understanding. Enraged by my defiance, she grabbed my textbook and threw it on the floor. "What are you doing? Even if you study, it's a waste. You're destined to be my slave and go to B high school with me." That day, our argument escalated into a physical fight. Our parents rushed in when they heard the commotion and separated us, but by then, my textbook was torn to shreds. More painful than the book was the realization of Lai's true feelings about me. I was just a convenient target for her frustrations. Understanding that Lai saw me as nothing more than her servant was a harsh awakening, but it fueled my determination. Despite the setback, I didn't give up. My parents intervened and contacted the school on my behalf, securing a new textbook for me. With their support, Lai no longer interfered with my studies, and I was able to focus and ultimately get into my chosen school. Lai, on the other hand, barely studied and went to B high school as she had initially declared. Our paths diverged. We attended different high schools, went to separate universities, and eventually started our careers. As an adult, I began living on my own, and that's when I met Quimby. He was hired at the same time as me, and we quickly felt a connection since we were from the same area. When he asked me out, I was over the moon. "I actually like you, Linny. I'd be happy if you'd go out with me," he said. Hearing those words filled me with joy. I had feelings for Quimby too, but I had never dared to admit them openly. Unlike Lai, I didn't have her confidence or beauty, and my limited experience with love made it hard to believe someone like Quimby could feel the same way about me. "I'd be happy to," I replied, feeling ecstatic. Being in a relationship for the first time made me feel truly overjoyed. Since we started dating, I did my best to make him happy, cooking meals and preparing lunchboxes for him. Quimby began visiting my apartment more frequently, and we started living almost like a couple. "Linny, I'll cook dinner tonight," Quimby would say, showing his own willingness to contribute. Our shared responsibilities made our time together enjoyable, and I began to believe that we could be a great married couple. After 3 years together, we decided to get married. I was overjoyed about the upcoming marriage, but there was one thing that troubled me. Quimby wanted to meet my twin sister. Over the 3 years we'd been dating, I'd mentioned that I had a twin, but I had never introduced him to Lai. I hadn't even told Lai about my relationship with Quimby. Since our big fight in middle school, a deep rift had remained between us. "Yes, that's right," I said, acknowledging Quimby's request. "But if we're getting married, it's inevitable that Lai and you will meet. I'm just anxious about how she might react. But I know I need to introduce you two eventually." When I finally called Lai to inform her of the upcoming marriage, she was clearly surprised and raised her voice in disbelief. I had informed my parents, but it seemed Lai hadn't heard the news yet. "Yeah, I'm getting married," I said. "I want you to meet the man I'm going to marry." "Oh, I'm busy, you know," Lai replied dismissively. "But if you insist, I guess I could meet him." Her condescending attitude was familiar, but I figured I had to be the mature one. We planned to meet on Lai's day off, with Quimby suggesting we all have a meal together with our parents at a restaurant. When the day came, we arrived at the restaurant, but Lai was late. "Lai's late," I told Quimby. She said she'd be on time. "Don't worry about it," Quimby said. "She'll show up eventually. Let's just wait a bit longer." Both my parents and I felt guilty about keeping Quimby waiting. 15 minutes past the scheduled time, Lai arrived in a flashy dress. "Sorry for making you wait," she said. "I thought it was a meet and greet, so I decided to dress up." I couldn't help but feel exasperated by her tardiness and her choice of outfit. My parents and I shared a look, and though it was frustrating, I swallowed my words to keep the peace. We introduced Lai to Quimby. "Wow, Linny, you've got yourself a good-looking one," Lai said. "And working at the same place, he must be doing well." From the start, Lai made several rude remarks to Quimby. "What do you do in your free time with Linny?" she asked. "And what did you do before you started dating her?" It felt more like a grilling session than a friendly introduction. Despite our parents' attempts to intervene, Lai continued her questioning, insisting she needed to know what kind of man I was marrying. Quimby handled it with grace, trying to ease the tension and keep the conversation light. By the end of the meal, I was exhausted and ready for it to be over. "Lai's quite the character, huh?" Quimby said with a sigh. "Quite the opposite of you, Linny." "I always say we're the least alike twins ever," I said with a forced smile. Quimby responded, "Maybe you should take a leaf out of Lai's book. She's always smiling, great at conversation, and cute. If I'd met her first." I was taken aback. I had shared my discomfort with Lai, so hearing Quimby make such a comment felt deeply shocking. "Why don't you just marry Lai then?" I snapped. "She even said you were handsome." Quimby's face went pale. Sorry, it was just a joke. I'm glad I met you, Linny. I don't have any special feelings for Lai." "That's not the point. You shouldn't make comments that praise Lai and put me down," I retorted. Quimby apologized profusely. "It was meant as a joke. I'm sorry. Let's all get along as a family now that we're adults. Things are different than they used to be." I had my reservations, but I knew our parents wanted Lai and me to get along. I wanted Quimby on my side, not trying to bridge the gap between Lai and me. It seemed like a hassle to argue, so I just nodded along to Quimby's words. A few days later, I received a chilling message from Lai. "Isn't Quimby too good for you? Should I take him off your hands?" I replied instinctively, "What are you talking about?" And she called immediately. "It's unbelievable," Lai said with a laugh. "Someone as dull as you is getting married before me. Quimby's high-earning and well-educated. Why not let me have him? We're twins, after all. We've always shared everything." "Don't say ridiculous things," I shouted. I couldn't tolerate Quimby being treated like an object or the idea that Lai and I had shared everything. It was absurd. I had always been the one Lai offloaded her unwanted things onto. That night, I warned Quimby about Lai, advising him to be cautious around her. But he seemed to brush it off, laughing. "It's nice to be liked that much. Don't worry, Lai's not serious." "It's not funny," I said. "You don't know what Lai might do. Do you doubt my feelings?" "No, it's okay," Quimby reassured me, despite the situation being far from ideal. I couldn't shake the feeling that Quimby had changed since meeting Lai. Whenever Lai was involved, he seemed to affirm everything about her just because she was my sister. Outside of that, he was still the wonderful partner I knew, but his reactions around Lai left me unsettled. Despite Quimby's reassurances that he wasn't swayed by Lai, I couldn't fully trust his words. This unease made me realize that my trust in him wasn't complete, and it troubled me. Nevertheless, I had decided to trust Quimby and dismiss Lai's spiteful messages, choosing to focus on our life together. Fortunately, Lai's interference diminished, and I hoped we could build a happy married life and strengthen our sisterly bond. Years passed, and after I turned 40, my parents informed me that Lai had gotten married. I had blocked her and had minimal contact, though we occasionally saw each other at family gatherings. Lai, now in her late 30s, had become resentful and seemed to avoid me, often making cutting remarks about me being unmarried until later in life. I had expected Lai to be picky about finding a partner, so I was genuinely glad to hear she had found someone. It made me reflect on how I had felt when Lai married after me. Lai eventually reached out through her parents to apologize, and we re-established communication. She had changed significantly, becoming much calmer and reminiscent of the Lai I once cherished. It was a joy to laugh together again, something I never thought would happen. She introduced me to her husband, Gabriel, who was about 5 years older and clearly cared for her deeply, which reassured me. As we both enjoyed our marriages, Lee and I grew closer, much to our parents' delight. I was eager to make up for the time we had lost. A few years later, something unexpected happened. I fell ill at work and had to leave early. Since Quimby was out on business, I left a message with a colleague and went straight home. As soon as I entered the house, something felt off. It seemed as if someone else was there, though the house was supposed to be empty. A fleeting thought of a potential burglar crossed my mind. I quietly moved through the house, listening carefully. Faint noises and voices came from the bedroom. Standing outside the door, I recognized Quimby's voice but couldn't bring myself to speak. The strained tone of his voice sent a chill through me. It was unmistakably an intimate moment. The creaking of the bed confirmed my fears. My hands shook, but I knew I needed evidence if Quimby was cheating. With my smartphone ready to record, I opened the door cautiously. What I saw inside the bedroom was beyond shocking. Leigh's voice became clearer as the door opened, and hearing Quimby say her name made me freeze. It was undeniable, the female voice was indeed Leigh's. Quimby, trembling, continued to call out her name, and the situation became painfully clear. I recorded the scene and left quietly, my mind reeling. I sat in the dining area, stunned, my earlier illness forgotten in the wake of this shocking discovery. I stared blankly at my phone, waiting for this nightmare to end. A few minutes later, the bedroom door opened. "I'll head back to work now, so lock up," a voice said. "It'd be nice if we could live together soon." At these words, I sprang to my feet. As I moved towards the noise, Quimby and Leigh saw me in the hallway. "Linny, why are you here?" Quimby asked, his face draining of color. "This is my house, right? But why is Leigh here? Aren't you both supposed to be at work?" Leigh looked away briefly before turning back with a smirk. "Why do you think you wanted to hear it from my own mouth?" Quimby tried to intervene, but Leigh continued, her voice laced with spite. "I've always hated how you look down on me. Happiness and Quimby don't suit you. I'll take everything." I smiled at her words. "Is that so? Then I'll give you Quimby, Leigh, but don't think you can take my happiness." Annoyed by my response, Leigh glared at me. Undeterred, I continued, "Yeah, I have already sent the video to Gabriel. We should discuss this as a group of 4 soon." Leigh's face went pale. "What do you mean?" "Just what I said. If you want Quimby, Gabriel should know about this, shouldn't he?" "What have you done?" Leigh lunged at me, but Quimby tried to calm her down. "Calm down? How can I calm down?" Leigh shouted, her voice rising uncontrollably. At that moment, Leigh's phone rang from her bag. She froze, her face draining of color. "Looks like Gabriel's calling," I said, watching her hesitation. Leigh glanced nervously at her bag, but she didn't answer the call. The room was silent except for the persistent ringing of the phone. When it finally stopped, my own phone rang. "See? Since Leigh didn't answer, now he's calling me," I said. "Linny, I'm truly sorry. Please forgive Leigh. Can you somehow cover for her with Gabriel? If not, she'll lose everything," Quimby pleaded, trying to protect Leigh. Beside him, Leigh sobbed bitterly, playing the tragic heroine. Quimby's plea made sense. Gabriel wasn't just Leigh's husband. He was also the president of the company where she worked. If he learned of Leigh's infidelity, divorce proceedings could start, and she might lose her job. Given that it was during work hours, there was no room for leniency. Although it felt harsh, Leigh had acted knowing full well she could lose everything. "I can't cover for her," I said firmly. "That's too harsh, Quimby." As usual, Quimby tried to defend Leigh, which only fueled my anger. I glared at him, my frustration boiling over. "Thinking Leigh is the only one who will suffer is a huge mistake," I snapped. Quimby flinched at my shout, his face going pale. He started sweating profusely, as if the gravity of my words had finally sunk in. It seemed he was beginning to understand the full impact of the situation. "Just so you know," I continued coldly, "I've also sent the video to the company's main email address, including your department and name." "What have you done?" Leigh asked, her voice trembling. By then, Gabriel's call had ended, leaving Quimby and Leigh frozen in despair. I wasted no time in kicking them out of the house. I called Gabriel next. "Sorry to disturb you," I said, "but it's about the video, right?" "Yes, it involves Quimby," Gabriel confirmed gently. "I'm sorry to ask this of you," he continued, explaining that he had suspected something was wrong with Leigh. Though Gabriel had always believed Leigh truly loved him, he felt it was necessary to gather evidence if she acted suspiciously. I told him that it was a lie to say I wasn't shocked. It was unbelievable to discover an affair, especially with my own sister. "Please don't apologize," I replied. "I'm glad I could capture evidence of Quimby's infidelity. If you hadn't asked me to gather proof, I might not have thought to do so calmly." Gabriel understood, and we agreed to discuss things further another time as my sons would be home soon. I hung up, tears streaming down my face. For their sake and for my future, I knew I had to stay strong. That evening, I followed my usual routine. When the kids were settled for the night, Quimby came home. "Were you with Lai?" I asked. Quimby, clearly agitated, snapped back. "I got called into HR because of you. They'll decide my punishment later." "What are you going to do about this?" I demanded, unable to hide my disdain. Quimby's attempt to shift the blame onto me was almost laughable. "Crying over a man like you is a waste of time," I said. "There's nothing to be done. Do as you please. But if we divorce, I'm taking the kids." "Still want to divorce?" Quimby asked, attempting to use our sons as leverage. "Stop being ridiculous," I retorted. "You're likely to lose your job. Divorce is inevitable. And you think you'll get custody after this?" Quimby fell silent, clearly realizing the gravity of his actions. His attempt to salvage the situation was pitiful. "I'll be leaving tomorrow," I stated firmly. "Wait a minute," Quimby pleaded, now adopting a submissive tone. "Can't we consider starting over? Can't you forgive just this one affair?" His desperate apologies did little to sway me. I was done with his excuses and ready to move on with my life. I questioned Quimby further, recalling Gabriel's observations about Lai's recent odd behavior. Given Gabriel's job, which kept him frequently away on sales trips, it was possible that Lai had been slipping into the house while he was gone. "Just once," Quimby replied weakly, his eyes darting nervously. The lack of confidence in his answer suggested it was more than just a one-time incident. Finding it pointless to dig deeper, I let the topic drop. The next day, I sat down with my sons, now in 6th grade and mature enough to understand betrayal and hurt. I explained the situation and apologized for the difficult conversation. They asked for some time alone to think things over, retreating to their room. A few minutes later, they emerged with their bags packed. "We're on your side, Mom," they said, their support moving me to tears. They laughed and comforted me, assuring me of their love. We then went back to my parents' house, where my parents were stunned by the news of Lai and Quimby's actions. Despite the joy of having reconciled with my sister, I felt remorseful. My mom, in tears, apologized, saying, "I'm sorry for always making you endure Lai." Dad assured me, "We'll keep our distance from Lai and Quimby from now on." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. From that day forward, I began commuting to work from my parents' home. Quimby, possibly on suspension, didn't come to the office but bombarded me with phone calls. I ignored him, overwhelmed by the situation. His messages became relentless, day and night, pleading with me to return to our life as a family. His messages were full of romantic pleas, declaring his love and regret. For a moment, I almost wavered, but my son's laughter at the absurdity of his emails reminded me of how ridiculous they were. Despite the temptation to ignore him indefinitely, I knew I couldn't avoid the reality forever. Eventually, I had to meet him to finalize the divorce papers. I arranged to meet Quimby at a cafe on my day off. Following Gabriel's advice, I chose a public place to keep the conversation as calm as possible. When Gabriel and Lai arrived together, I noticed how much weight Lai had lost in just a few days. She looked like a different person. It was evident she had fallen out of favor with Gabriel. "Serves her right. Both of you need to sign the divorce papers," I said firmly. It was clear that Lai was also reluctant to proceed, and both of them hesitated. Quimby insisted, "It's a misunderstanding. Gabriel, it's your choice to divorce, but we won't." I shot back, "My sons and I no longer consider you family." I addressed Quimby's desperate attempts to avoid the reality of the situation. Gabriel sighed heavily and said, "You can take this to court, but you'll likely lose. Considering the alimony and legal fees for the trial, do you think you can afford it?" I added, "Yes, you both betrayed your families. Lai, to me, and Quimby, to Lenny. You'll have to pay a proper settlement in the divorce trial." Lai trembled silently, her weight loss now making sense. "What am I supposed to do? I might get fired. How can I pay?" Quimby argued, looking pale. "You did this to yourself," I retorted. "Besides, you owe child support for both kids, right?" Lay flinched at my words. You wanted to live together, right? You're welcome to keep the house. I laughed harshly. Just don't forget about the mortgage payments. Quimby's face fell, likely realizing he had overlooked the mortgage. Both of them sat there, pale and silent, staring at the divorce papers. Later, Gabrielle introduced me to a lawyer, and I successfully claimed alimony and legal fees, finalizing the divorce. To my surprise, Quimby proposed to Lai immediately after our divorce was finalized. I had always suspected he had feelings for Lai from the start. Their affair must have become serious quickly. I felt nothing but disdain for them. Meanwhile, Lai, who had genuinely loved Gabrielle, was left abandoned and eventually lost her job. I was puzzled by how she ended up with Quimby despite her feelings for Gabrielle. Seeking answers, I asked Gabrielle about it. He hesitated before revealing, "Actually, she started complaining about you a few months ago. She was envious that you, who she considered useless, got married and had kids. It was quite extravagant." Could it really be because of that? I wondered, but given Lai's personality, it wasn't entirely impossible. The thought that she went to such lengths just to undermine me was horrifying. "I thought you might be in danger, so I consulted Lenny, but I never imagined it would lead to this with Quimby. I'm truly sorry," Gabrielle said apologetically. "It's okay, it's over now. Quimby is to blame for accepting Lai's invitation," I replied, concluding our conversation. Gabrielle and I agreed to stay in touch for updates on the divorce compensation and legal matters. According to him, Quimby and Lai, burdened with substantial divorce compensation, ended up marrying and living together. Lai had been abandoned by her parents and had nowhere else to go. It seemed she reluctantly accepted Quimby's proposal due to her lack of family. From what the lawyer told me, Lai was devastated by the fact that she ended up divorcing Gabrielle and marrying Quimby, whom she didn't love, all because of me. The lawyer mentioned that she often hurled abusive language at him during his calls. Despite this, the lawyer remained steadfast in his support, possibly due to Gabrielle's influence, for which I was deeply grateful. We would still need to make calls to demand the divorce compensation, and I continued to rely on their support. 5 years later, the divorce compensation and child support were being paid on time, and my emotional wounds had mostly healed. One day, after a long period of calm, the lawyer contacted me. "Lai says she has something urgent to discuss with you." I hesitated, knowing that Lai would likely use me as a verbal punching bag. I decided not to trust or forgive her and asked the lawyer to convey my refusal. However, Lai insisted it was urgent, and Quimby also requested a meeting on her behalf. Given their persistence, I reluctantly agreed. Lacking the courage to meet them alone, I contacted Gabrielle, feeling somewhat guilty after such a long time. He gladly agreed to accompany me. When we arrived at the cafe, Quimby and Lai sat with solemn expressions. Upon seeing me, Lai looked slightly relieved. "What's this about? Why did you call me here?" I asked. Lai hesitated before speaking. "Actually, I've developed renal failure and need to undergo dialysis." I was taken aback. "It's your fault." "No, both of your faults. That Lai ended up like this. She couldn't sleep without alcohol, and because of the divorce settlement, she had to work through the pain. Your actions have destroyed her health." Quimby, visibly angry, shifted the blame back to us, but I thought it was their own doing. Gabrielle seemed to agree, sighing and looking exasperated. "So what?" I said firmly. "I'm not reducing or refunding the divorce settlement." "Be thankful I agreed to installments." Lai, in tears, lowered her head. "I'll pay the divorce settlement. Please, I'm begging you, give me a kidney." "What are you talking about?" "There's no way I'm giving you a kidney," I exclaimed in disbelief at Lai's outrageous request. When I refused, Quimby chimed in, "You were born with a twin in Lai. Because of that, you have a duty to help her." "What are you talking about?" I retorted, angered. "Who's been dealing with all the unpleasantness while Lai has never helped me in any of these situations? Don't try to make this about duty." Quimby, growing increasingly agitated, shot back, "Lai's life is at stake here." Lai, now crying and pleading, begged me to reconsider. Quimby, insulted and desperate, accused me of being heartless, trying to pressure me into agreeing to the transplant. At that moment, Gabriel intervened. If she needs dialysis, then she needs dialysis. Do you understand how difficult dialysis is? And do you understand how challenging a transplant is? Why should Linny risk her life for Lai? Gabriel's words left them speechless, and I felt a wave of relief with his support. Gabriel continued, Lai, you've repeatedly called Linny useless. Isn't it a bit convenient to ask for help only when you're in trouble? You've destroyed Linny's happy life. She has no obligation to save yours. Lai broke down into sobs, and Quimby stood there, lost for words. They must have assumed I'd give in if I were alone, but Gabriel's presence had strengthened my resolve. Take care, and don't forget the payment for this month's divorce settlement, Gabriel said as I rose to leave. Whether they call me heartless or a devil, I can't forgive them. I don't know what kind of life they'll lead from now on, but I hope they never forget what they've done and reflect on it. It seems Quimby and Lai are now struggling financially, working part-time to make ends meet, but with Lai's inability to work, their situation is dire. That's their karma, a result of their actions. Their atonement won't end until they've fulfilled the divorce settlement's compensation requirements. Meanwhile, I continue to live happily with my parents and sons. My parents no longer even mention Lai's name, but they're pleased to see my sons getting along well. It's comforting to witness the bond between them, a bond Lydia and I never had. I stay in touch with Gabriel frequently. He's genuinely good, always thoughtful and considerate. It seems he has developed feelings for me, but I'm not ready to reciprocate at this time. I don't want to upset my sons further. In a few years, when they come of age, I hope to have the chance to focus on my own happiness again.